Bring in more revenue while saving money and differentiate yourself from the rest of the pack vying to win those guests by becoming more environmentally friendly. We will show you how easy it is and how cheap it can be, if not free, and share all the opportunities available. So join us each week as we take another step along the green path. That's one more step to differentiate yourself from the rest of the pack. The Green Path podcast is kindly sponsored by Sestonica, the first sustainability recognition for vacation rental homes. What if vacation rental professionals could influence millions of travellers to make their own homes more sustainable? Show the world that you have taken steps to make your vacation rental consume less and get your badge on sestonica.com. Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Green Path podcast. We've heard about carbon footprint calculators for our businesses, but what about the carbon you emit when you travel? The planes, trains and automobiles, the accommodation. How can you figure out all of that and do something helpful to offset your trip? Well, now it's as easy as booking your trip. Where are you going? How are you getting there? And where are you staying? Put in your dates and hey presto. Today we'll find out what happens after the presto part. Today I'm chatting with Dan Whiting, who will explain to us what Stay Green does. Hello, Dan. How are you?
Hello, not bad, thank you. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you very much for joining me today. Dan, I always like to start an episode with discovering where you started. How did you start on your Green Path journey? How long ago and what inspired you to start?
Okay, I guess there's a few answers to that. I think what's probably really driven it home for me is having kids, and suddenly there's somebody in the world that's far more important than you, and the realization of the impact that we're having and what we're leaving behind. So it sort of makes you a lot less selfish. So that sort of was the key moment. But we have a property management company. And it was actually during lockdown, sort of sat looking at shelves of linen and cleaning products and just thinking about the business in general, that actually we thought, we are part of the problem and, we need to be doing more. As we've seen, guests want to do more. All these great stats that come out about 80% plus are looking for eco-friendly properties to stay in. The guests, when they actually come, they want to actually learn and do more. So, it was really, wanting to leave something better behind and do my bit, because, I'm sure there's going to be a day in the future when my kids say, come on, Dad, you guys all knew about this. What did you do? And I want to be able to actually say, well, I tried. I did something. But it's, obviously the travel industry accounts for, I think it's 8 to 10%, maybe more, of carbon emissions. It's sort of, I feel there's a duty on us to do something. And, it is madness when you look at, even a box of bleach. You've got 6 units of bleach in there, and that's 6 kilograms. That's been ferried all around the country, which is, a weight that creates a carbon footprint, whereas actually it's 80% water. So, you've got water in your tap at home. So you can, there's lots of things you can do. You can get tablets that you just add the water to. So it's, there's a lot of little changes and choices that we can make to make a difference.
Can you share with us some of the things that you do in your property management company? How are you making your business or your properties more sustainable?
Yeah, so talking about the properties, as I was just saying to you before we came online, I live in a World Heritage City, Bath in the West Country of England, which, the properties are all 200 years old plus, and we're not allowed to put double glazing in. Lots of them are converted Georgian townhouses, which are now apartments. So you're not even in control. You're in the management company sort of control what happens to the building. But even still, there are changes that you can make. And I think it's about, again, choices, energy providers, getting in smart heating. We've got things like Nest and Hive and all of the properties. So as soon as guests leave, I'm sort of on it straight away and killing the heating to make sure there's just no wastage there. It's about the products that we use in terms of cleaning. but it's also guest education as well. So, we're hosting people from all over the world, and things are different in every country, and there's obviously cultural differences. But it's making sure that we explain about recycling, we explain about simple things on the toilet. You've got a long flush and a short flush, so making sure you're using those appropriately. Signage, if you've got the heating on, keep the window shut. We provide extra blankets, so if they're cold, rather than cranking the heating up, it's like maybe just throw a blanket on to start with. We provide keep cups, because obviously everyone's going to go and get a coffee while they're staying, but they might not have brought their own keep cup. So we provide those. We provide.
So these are like the thermos reusable coffee cups that you take to a cafe?
Exactly. Yeah. Again, it's just not creating the need for one of the disposable ones to be thrown in the bin, and also sort of tote bags as well. So when they go and do their shopping, because it's very unlikely that anyone coming to stay in a self-catering rental is going to bring their own shopping bags. So we make sure that they've got those. So there's lots of little things. I'm sure there's things we're missing. We can obviously always do more, but I think it's just trying to do something and making those small steps and the choices, and then ultimately what I'm talking to you about is giving them the choice to actually contribute towards rebalancing the carbon impact of their stay.
Yes. So I just want to just touch on one more thing. So back in the properties, how do you share that message with the guests? Is it, do you have little signs all over the place that, about the toilet flush and this and that? How, or is it in the guidebook? How do you get that message across?
So a bit of both, and you've got to be very conscious that this is people's holidays, so they don't want to read 101 rules and feel like they're at school. So you've got to do it in a friendly way that makes it feel like it's not a burden on them. So it's a mixture. It's about setting the right tone of why we're saying this, but trying to make it helpful for them. So there was a great stat I heard that actually rather than just saying turn the heating down to 18 degrees because it saves energy, it's actually, there's evidence that you sleep better if the room is at 18 degrees. So it's about little things like that. So it's actually to say, rather than turn the heating up, try sleeping at 18 degrees. If you are cold, here's a hot water bottle and things like this. So it's pitching it in the right way is obviously very challenging, and with some guests it really lands, and with some guests not so well. But that's the nature of the game that we're in.
Yeah. And do you share what you do regarding sustainability on your website? If a guest is snooping around looking at your various properties, can they actually land on a page that explains what you're doing?
No, and thank you for reminding me. That is definitely that is definitely on my to-do list. We've got to do a lot more. I mean, our website only drives about 10% of our bookings, so it definitely falls to the bottom of the pile of the site that we take the most care of or least care of. We do rely on the third-party OTAs, and we put as much information on there as we can. But I mean, there's a lot to do, and it's all these things that we need to get better at and make sure that we're communicating it.
Yes, absolutely. So back onto travel. So travel is a big polluter. Now you're talking about the rebalancing. So that means the carbon that you emit while you travel, what you're offering is we're going to offset all of that carbon. Is that right? That's the balance that you're talking about.
Yeah. So, and the reason we call it sort of rebalancing and sort of contribution is because it's never going to be completely accurate. So, there's been a lot of research, and we're able to use that data and apply that to people's journeys using our calculation tool in terms of how they actually get to the properties and the vacations. But it's never going to be an exact science. So that's why we like to think of it as a contribution. And, sometimes it might be a bit more, it might be a bit less, but, it's about making a difference, and actually rather than doing nothing, having a contribution. I know in certain walks, it has to be, down to the nearest gram of carbon, and it has to be documented. We've sort of taken the view that we've made our calculators as accurate as we possibly can, but we'd like to call it a contribution.
Yes. No, I think it's even if it's not 100% right, it's still you're still taking a step in the right direction. You're still doing something, and it's better than doing nothing. So I think that's great. And I did. I'll come back to the rounding up later on. So you're looking at the travel aspect, the transport aspect. So you're taking into account if someone is driving or flying, et cetera, and you're taking into account the accommodation. So this is an interesting thing for me, because we always hear about, oh yeah, you buy a ticket on EasyJet and here's £5 for the offsetting. But you don't hear about the offsetting actually staying in a hotel or a property or something like this. So I found this one is actually quite interesting. So based on the size and also there's the seasons that you take into account as well, hence the dates. So can you talk us through the calculator, basically? Actually, just talk us through the whole calculator, the transport and the accommodation.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, the transport is the easier one. It's basically calculating the distance between 2 points and then applying, depending on what method of transport you're using, how much carbon that will likely produce. So travellers, guests can calculate that, and that comes up with a figure. But yeah, the accommodation is sort of what is unique, or more unique, I guess. And that is, we've done a lot of research into how much carbon a stay will create. And we've got something that we've called sort of climate factoring, which is applying it to the time of year that you're staying. Because, just using the UK as an example, if you're staying in August, you're going to be using far less heating than if you're staying in December. So rather than having a sort of straight line approach to it, we've actually built that intelligence into the tool and the algorithm, so that it can actually work out, well, depending on what time of year you're staying, it affects how much carbon you're producing. And everyone will know that from their utility bills. You're using a lot more gas in the winter than in the summer. But it's not just that, it's, even water has a carbon footprint. So it calculates that. So that's why we need to know how many people are staying, how long they're staying, and the size of the property. Because obviously, more bedrooms, more rooms to heat. If they're obviously self-catering, adds a different aspect to hotels. Hotels don't really have that element, but we've got gas cookers, electric cookers, plus that whole extra space in itself needs heating. So it takes into consideration all these different factors, and then comes up with the most likely amount of carbon that particular trip will produce. And it's quite interesting because some property owners want to just offset their property for the whole year themselves, but it's quite a personal stay. So unless they went to the extreme of full occupancy the whole of the year, and not having any down days or anything like that, and actually even that wouldn't work because we account for the cleaners and the laundry. So obviously if somebody's staying for a week, they might not have a clean during that time, whereas if you've got a 2-night minimum, you might have 3-4 cleans during that same period. So it's very hard to do it just for a homeowner just to pay for it. It's actually very unique to the guests actually staying.
Yeah. And I think it is a lovely way that the guest actually contributes. I want to offset my travel, and you go through that little calculator, and it is very simple. It is literally like booking a stay. I'm flying there from Sydney to Nice, whatever it is, how many nights, what accommodation, and then, hey presto, there's the number of pounds that I should pay. Round it up. Yeah. I noticed that I think one of the figures, I did a few tests, and the figures was like, £10.16, and you rounded it up to 11. So, that factoring up is going to give you a little bit of fat. If you're making the calculations not quite right, that there's a little bit of fat with rounding it up anyway.
Yeah, and again, it's the contribution. I mean, in effect, it's I don't think anyone should be stingy around this subject, because it's for the benefit of all of us. And the reason, I must say the response from guests has been absolutely fantastic, and actually, lots of guests are actually very thankful that they've been given this, and they want to research it and use it more, and they've told their friends, which is great. But ultimately, some travel is a necessity, but lots of travel it's hedonistic. We don't need to do it. Obviously, it's great for the soul. It expands the mind, and it's got many, many benefits, of which I take full advantage of whenever I can. But we don't absolutely have to do it, and as the pandemic showed, we can stay locked up in our houses. Well, not particularly happy about it, but so therefore there's costs associated with that, and I think good and bad. So there's obviously the negative cost of the impact on the environment, but the positive is hopefully things like my company and others. You can actually start to contribute to at least minimizing that impact.
Yes. Now here we go with the next part. Let's say I contribute my £11 for my trip, and I did see that the shorter trips. I mean, it's actually quite a small amount. That £11 was flying from Australia to Europe, on a plane. Actually, I think it was just the plane aspect. Oh, actually, what I might add is that you have 3 calculators. You have one that just gives you the contribution for the accommodation, just for the travel, and one for a whole trip. So I like that you've separated them, because you could be just staying local or something. But yeah, that was nice. I like that.
Yeah, well, also we wanted, obviously some people feel more comfortable about just one aspect of it rather than maybe doing all of it. And, as we know, there's certain properties and accommodation providers doing a better job than others. So, if you were going to stay in an eco retreat, you probably wouldn't feel the need to offset the accommodation.
So the big thing is, where does the money go? What do you fund with the money that you raise?
So we haven't sort of said we go all into one thing. So it's not all going into trees. I think, there's a number of things in the toolbox to offset a number of projects. So, first and foremost, everything that we put money into is verified and gold standard. Unfortunately, the pushback that we have in the sort of carbon offsetting industry is that there's been a few charlatans that have, abused it and given it a bad name in certain sectors. So we have to sort of combat that, and we obviously make sure that every penny that we put into an offset project is a bona fide project. But we're not going to say we just put it into trees. Trees are obviously fantastic. The more we can get, the better. But they take 10 years, a decade to actually sequence carbon meaningfully. So and it does frustrate me a lot when you get lots of these companies that sort of buy a beer and we'll plant a tree. It's like the economics on that just don't work. To look after a tree, buy a plot of land, look after it for 10 whole years. I don't believe it, and that sort of falls into greenwashing, which again is something that we have to sort of combat, and it's a shame that it exists. So there's projects that we put money into. So there's seaweed farms. Obviously, the oceans are actually far greater than the land. Actually,
that was one. That was one I'd never heard of before. Seaweed capturing carbon. Wow.
Yeah, no, far more efficient than trees, apparently. I mean, again, I've had to learn a lot through this process, and you can't sort of know it all, but apparently seaweed captures a lot more. But then, we've sort of adopted the same sort of strategy or ethos as the UN, which is, sort of capture, reduce and replace. Obviously, in terms of capturing, that's what we're trying to do in offset. Replace is, there's projects that we put money into, especially sort of in the emerging economies and third world, where, the default is to go to cheap coal, power stations, and actually some of the money actually goes into projects where it's helping them fund renewable energy from the get-go, which it feels like it's a world away, but it's a climate change is a global problem. So so there's that. There's reduce. Now this is again something that's on my to-do list, but we don't just want to say to guests to offset and then everyone feels happy about themselves. We do actually want the accommodation providers to do more. So like I was saying about what our company's doing, I do want to share that, and I want to share that on my company site, but also the Stay Green site as well, so that you know, and I know there's plenty of people in the industry trying to do this, and you know, we are looking at how we can best promote that message, so that you know, accommodation providers actually do more, because I think it's got to be a joined up piece. You can't sort of pay for your offsetting your accommodation, then turn up and find that the hosts aren't really doing anything about it. So you know, that's sort of in the roadmap for the business.
Yeah. So capturing the carbon, replacing the use of fossil fuel with the renewable energies, and reducing waste.
Reducing waste.
I think reducing waste is a really easy one that we can all get started on. You know, like we're talking about the, you know, refillable amenities rather than the single-use plastics, and there is a lot we could do in terms of waste. So yes, definitely reducing waste, reducing water usage, different, you know, change your shower heads, more efficient appliances. So yeah, that's definitely something we could be doing.
Yeah, no, and again, with, you know, recycling, you know, it's obviously fantastic and we have to do it, but it's not going to solve the problem. I think all of these things just are part of you know, what's going to solve it. And I was thinking the other day, I'm sorry if I'm going slightly off piece, but like, you know, we are in a fantastic position that we've got the intelligence to know that there's a big problem, but we've also got all the tools we need to do it. And actually all we need to do is just get behind it, and everyone just do their bit. And you know, it's not even, it doesn't have to inconvenience us. It can be simple things like, you know, don't have meat one day a week if you have it every day a week. You know, have you know, it's just these little choices. And you know, to recycle, it's you know, sorry to go on about my family, but like, you know, we've got 2 babies. We use reusable nappies, so we wash them. But we have bin collections fortnightly, and we only produce it's like 15 litres worth of rubbish, because everything else we recycle or reuse or compost. So, you know, and when you see sometimes when guests stay and they've produced 2 black bags for like, you know, 4 days, you're like, come on, we can do better here.
Yeah. Well, maybe there needs to be some sort of course on that. But you know, I find one of the ways you can start reducing is already, but like what you're eating. When you go to the supermarket and you know, you end up with a basket full of packaging. You know, I don't do that. I'm actually very proud of the fact that when I look at my stuff, it's pretty much all fresh or frozen. And I don't actually get stuff with a lot of packaging. I only take my rubbish out once a week. I have a little bag of rubbish. I don't go through much either. But it's the education of be very wary of what you're going to put in your shopping trolley. You know, think about what you're doing. And also these, you know, supermarkets and manufacturers, they need to think about it too. We really don't need a wrapped, you know, pear or apple, avocado, whatever, you know, don't.
No, I was thinking about this actually. I was thinking if we put that onus on the supermarkets and the shops to actually take care of that. So if we went to the supermarket and said, right, I'm going to unwrap that, I'm going to put it in my reusable bag. Here, you need to deal with that. If we had the faith that they would actually do the right thing with that. But I think if you actually put, you know, it's effectively their wrapping, we only want the product inside. If we put the onus and the cost back on them to deal with that, I think there'd be a change in policy, let's say.
Now, here's something very interesting that I learned a number of years ago. When I was living in the UK, I was shocked that if I just wanted to buy one pepper, one capsicum, I have to buy 3 because they come in a packet and I can't buy one loose one. Or there was something else, maybe apples. I had to buy a bag of apples. I couldn't just buy one. I like to buy, you know, 1 or 2 pieces at a time, keep it fresh. And, you know, I don't want to throw away anything that wastes. And I learned that Tesco, this was the one company that the person I spoke to was from, he said the reason they package everything up is for wastage. They don't have any waste. When someone's got to buy a packet of 3, there's no waste. They put the packets out there, all the packets get bought. One item doesn't fall on the floor and get bruised or whatever. They don't end up with, but the problem is we end up with waste in our garbage bins. So isn't it better that the fruit or veg can be used. Give it to a charity, give it to a homeless place. They can cook up whatever the food is left over. That's a much better use of the waste. And I think maybe we need to start talking to supermarkets about, you got to stop doing this. That waste
100%.
going to a charity is better than the waste that's ending up in my bin and in a landfill.
100%, yeah.
The message of the day. Oh, sorry. Should I say the rant of the day? No, I think that's great. Now, one question I have for you is, if someone wants to offset their trip, do they have to come to your website to do it?
So this is, very good question. So the way the site's been built is it's based on an API. So even our website APIs into the tool, because, we need to get this message out to as many people as possible. And me, nagging accommodation providers is going to take me a lifetime. And, the easiest way is if we can partner with booking platforms and digital guidebooks, etc., so that as many hosts and accommodation providers are just offering this to their guests. We know the guests want it. The conversion rates we're getting at the moment, considering they do have to come to our website and then put the data in, it's not clunky, but it takes a bit of time. So considering we're getting a 22% conversion rate based on that, I'm pretty pleased with. So at the moment, that is the easiest way. But one day it would be great. And the way we've built it is that it can integrate with these sites, because obviously then it would have the dates, it'd have the location, it'd have the size of the property, number of people, etc. And it would make it completely seamless, make it very easy for somebody just to check a box and say, yes, I'm willing to contribute towards offsetting. But you're absolutely right. At the moment, it is very much just coming to our website and inputting the data yourself.
Yeah. So, okay. So if it's not integrated with PMS, is there a way that probably not on all it would take is a link on a booking confirmation email, or the check-in instruction email a week before. Here's a link if you want to offset your thing. And if it has to go back to you, it has to go back to you. But that link can be incorporated in a property manager's email to the guest, to get the guest back to you to be involved. Yeah,
exactly. And what we can do is actually set up their own account so they can actually see how much impact they're making. So if Deborah's Holiday Lets wanted to have your own account, we would give you a link to then share with your guests. And to be honest, when we were beta testing, that's what we were doing, was just sharing a link.
Yeah. And the thing is, you could also maybe talk to some booking engines. So if anyone has their own website, direct booking website, it can be part of the checkout process, something like that.
100%.
Through the PMS. Yeah. That'd be lovely. I'd like to see it integrated.
Yeah.
Seamless for the guests. Yeah. Exactly.
Make it as easy as possible to make a difference. And obviously anyone watching, get in touch.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think that's lovely. Look, the easiest thing they could do is put a link to and I'll put the link actually in the description below. Put a link on the booking confirmation page, or the check-in, or even in the digital guidebook. They're already there. You want to offset, your journey. Here's the link, and contribute. Yeah, I think that's lovely. Well, we've come to the end of the usual sort of questions. Is there anything else that we haven't touched on that you think we should know about?
I think I've rambled on quite a lot.
That's good.
I did make some notes, but I think roundabout, I think I've got there one way or the other. So no, I think that's it from me.
Okay, lovely. Well, Dan, it's been a pleasure learning about Stay Green. I think it's a really, really great initiative, and I will be putting the links in the description below. And if you have any questions for Dan or Stay Green, pop them in the comments below. Dan, thank you very, very much for your time today.
Thank you very much. Cheers.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that episode and were at least a little bit inspired. If you'd like to catch up on the other episodes that you've missed, just head to thegreenpathpodcast.com. See you next time.